Hello everyone, welcome to Alt Shift Studio. My name is Sabi Ahmed and I'm the Associate Director and Curator of Ishara Art Foundation. Today's session with Alt Shift Studio is with artist Rajyashri Goody. Rajyashri is a visual artist based out of Pune in India. Over the past 5 years, she's been involved in setting up and facilitating artist residencies and studios in both Pune and Nagpur. Her practice ranges across media that includes writing, ceramics, photography, video, bookmaking, and sculptural works made with found objects and food items, through which she attempts to decode and make visible instances of everyday power and resistance within Dalit communities in India. Rajyashri was part of Ishara Foundation's second exhibition titled Bodybuilding that was curated by Nada Raza and took place from September to December in 2019. Rajyashri is going to be sharing with us how the studio is configured through her practice, and we're going to begin by having her make a presentation, followed by a conversation with me and my colleague Laura Metzler. We hope you'll enjoy the session, and we're going to pass this over to Rajyashri now.
Hi, Sabi and Laura. Thank you so much for inviting me to be a part of this series on artist studios. I'd like to begin with a little bit about my practice. I work mainly on themes of caste, and for the last few years, I've been focusing on the relationship of Dalit communities with access to certain human rights like food, water, to public spaces, but also to literacy and to tools of documentation. My studio is it's spread around the city. It's not necessarily in one place. This is mainly because my practice is quite multidisciplinary. And so I'm dependent on other individuals and industries for the production of it. I make ceramics at a place called Adipa Studio. I make paper mainly at home, but I've also started working from the Government Institute of Handmade Paper here. I make text-based work and also work with photo archives. Mainly that happens on my laptop, but for printing, I would do that in an area called Paper Gully in the old part of Pune, where all the commercial printing is done. I'd like to begin though with some of the different spaces I've used as studios before. Since I began my art practice 5 years ago, I've had the opportunity to attend quite a few art residencies, and they've really shaped my practice, but also my understanding of what a studio is and what it can be. I'll begin with TIFA and the Good Artist. So TIFA is the building over here at the back where we're all seated on. It was started by Trishla Telera, who's second from left here. And she converted an Art Deco building, which was owned by her family, into an art space in 2014. I was then working with the Good Artist. This was a platform set up by Shraddha Borauke, a Pune-based artist as well. That's Shraddha on the left. And it was really a platform to bring together the creative community of Pune. It was quite exciting. I wasn't a practicing artist then, but I was very interested in this idea of not only being part of a community, but part of creating a community as such. Through the Good Artist, we got the opportunity to host the Coach International Artist Workshop here in Pune. And so we met Trishla in that context. I don't think TIFA had any major events yet. So we as the Good Artists began using it to host activities. And the major one was this Coach International Artist Workshop. This was the core group. So we were in charge of fundraising, of inviting artists from India and across the world to come to TIFA, to come to Pune, and to make site-specific experimental work for 2 weeks. Just some scenes of what TIFA looked like inside then. This was on our last open studio day. This is just some of the artists, not everyone. And the hotel staff are the 4 men at the back. They became quite an integral part of the workshop, especially because a lot of the artists interviewed them and spoke to them about Pune and their lives, and incorporated that into their artworks that they made at TIFA. It was quite exciting for all of us, for the staff, for the artists, because we didn't really know what would come out of this space that had just been lying empty for a decade or two now. This was just some of the studios. My friend Prashant making an installation out of crushed glass. Saiful from Indonesia collaging a bathroom of TIFA. Svea from Germany doing a performance. Francesca from Miami. And my work. So although I wasn't a practicing artist then, the workshop works in a very specific way. So the core group also gets to participate in it. So we get a studio and we're expected to make work as well. And so here I was with a studio for myself and not just organizing things. And I didn't quite know what to do in it for the first week. I knew I wanted to speak about caste in some way, and I was interested in installation. But this began to take shape in the last week. So I come from a Dalit background, but I hadn't really addressed that in any other work of mine previously, or really even spoken about it much. But I had been feeling the need more and more to vocalize it in some way. And this residency really provided me with that space to do so. The footwear represents, it's quite a literal representation of the cosmic man that Manu speaks about. Manu is quite a revered figure in Hindu history. And Manu said that Brahmins come from the head, and the Kshatriyas, the warriors, come from the knees, and the Dalits have a position below the feet. So they're not even the feet; they have a position below the feet of this cosmic man, and it's quite a horrific thing to realize, that you're not even considered partly human. You're considered dirt, pollution, the earth. So as a very literal representation of that, I decided to gather footwear from around Pune and hang it up here, and people could walk in and, do what they wanted. As part of it, I also bought some footwear and was walking around the area of TIFA and asked people on the street to exchange their footwear with the ones I had. This was mainly to start a conversation about about pollution, about purity, about dirt, and about caste, and what they felt about it. And I was able to actually get quite a few pairs of footwear through this. But yeah, I was mainly interested in the conversations I could have with this. The residency was only 2 weeks, and I couldn't collect many pairs of shoes like this. So I went to secondhand markets and shoe stores in Pune and was able to get them in bulk. So this is a picture of us installing the shoes on a volleyball net. These were two men who were daily wage workers who we met near TIFA. So TIFA is right next to the railway station. So a lot of men wait there every day for work, and through the residency and through our production budget that we got, we were able to hire some of them to come assist us with our work. And then a few months later, I got the opportunity to go to Bamboo Curtain Studio in Taipei. This was a very different art residency or workshop from TIFA. Bamboo Curtain doesn't give artists a studio. They give an artist a bedroom, and you're encouraged to use the neighborhood and the city as your studio. They don't really approve of artists coming from another country and just sitting in one place and doing their work in a corner without interacting with anybody. And this was very exciting for me because I'd never been to Taiwan before and I wanted to get to know the city. But I was also interested in how I would respond to it now with the title of artist. What I did was, these are just two screenshots of me speaking to some young Taiwanese people. I decided to interview people my age. I was then 25, on the concept of identity, on what it meant to be Taiwanese. Just a way to get to know people, get to know the country, get to know the city. I would go to their homes and we would make tea and we would just sit for quite a few hours just talking about our lives. And this was Sahan on the left and Akai on the right. Sahan is a Taiwanese artist, and she helped me a lot in putting together all the interviews, and so did Akai. She was a student volunteer assigned to me by Bamboo Curtain Studio. So just some of the parts of Taipei that we went to. And this is an interactive installation I made through these interviews. So I took out pieces of identities that that my new friend spoke about, and I put it all on this round chalkboard, and it became a game for people to interact with during the Open Studio Day. And then the next year, in like the summer of 2016, I went to Piramal Art Residency in Thane. The art residency then was it was on the grounds of what was previously a chemical factory, but that had been shut down for many years. And now the area was being converted into like high-rise luxury apartments. And us artists, I think there were 6 of us, we were really the only people there, like living there. There were other people around who worked there, security guards, gardeners, carpenters, daily wage workers who were breaking down the buildings, etc., and building. But it was so big that you'd sometimes hardly see anybody. But you would notice men's clothing lying in different corners of the ground, like maybe on a tree or behind an empty wall. Sort of like this an image I took in one of the buildings of Piramal. And seeing these inspired me to make an installation based on this. It was called Changing Room. Basically, I managed to buy secondhand clothes from the Thane market, and I began hanging them in an empty water reservoir. This is what it looked like from the top. A bit ghost-like, but also just quite honest and responding to the residency and responding to the environment that we were in at that time. That's images. And this is Asia Culture Center in Gwangju. I was able to attend this in September in 2016 for 3 months. It was part of a larger art residency. So it was the ACC Rijksakademie Dialogue and Exchange. And it was 3 months in South Korea and 3 months in the Netherlands. Now, the South Korea section of it, Asia Cultural Center, was a residency for research. And for the first time, I didn't need to produce some artwork. I think the residencies before, with a studio and with a production budget, we were encouraged to actually make some art. But with Asia Culture Center, this was our office that each artist was given. And we were discouraged to, we weren't allowed to dirty the place in any way. But this was ideal for me because I really wanted and needed time to understand, what my practice was and what I was interested in really and where I was heading with this. I spent a lot of time in the ACC library and archive section. These are images I got from their website. They have a huge collection, not much on India, but South Asia and theory and research, all kinds of things that I spent 3 months reading. These were some of the books that I was going through. I was really trying to, figure out, how my anthropology makes sense in my art and how art and anthropology are related. That was going through my brain a lot. But I was also very aware of what was going on back home. Then in 2016, I apologize for this image, but these 4 Dalit men had been lynched in Una in Gujarat because they were transporting a dead cow. This was by self-appointed cow protectors or Gorakshaks. And because beef eating in India had been banned, Dalits and other minority communities were being attacked, sometimes just for doing their hereditary jobs of getting rid of dead animals. This incident was very horrific, and Una, Gujarat had many protests as a result of this. Dalit communities, Muslim communities, everybody came together to fight against this injustice. And it really made me much more aware about Dalit food, like what is Dalit food, and what is the relationship of taste and certain meats and memories with caste. I was also able to read this book. I found it online at Asia Culture Center, called "Isn't This Plate Indian?" It had actually been put together by students of the Pune University who worked with Sharmila Rege. This was part of their project for their gender studies program. And it was a wonderful book that really brought out how Dalit literature speaks about food and why these memories are important in our history. I was very moved to the point that even like today, most of my work is sort of centered around this text. And then I went to the Rijksakademie in Amsterdam. This was early 2017. This was my studio at the Rijks. This was the production part of the big 6-month residency, and I had been reading for 3 months, and I was quite excited now to make work. And now that I had a sort of flow, like I was interested in particular things, I didn't feel the need to be site specific anymore, which was quite a relief in a way. I also carried my own books. I mean, the Rijksakademie has an amazing library, but I think on Dalit history, not many libraries are well stocked on that. So I carried my own books, things I had to read, and just spent 3 months there making work. This was the first booklet I produced. I began making these cookbooks. So the third book on the left, the top left, is Annaheya Purna Brahma, written by Shahu Patore. It's a Marathi cookbook, and it's on Dalit food. And this is really the only cookbook I found specifically that speaks about Dalit community. And Shahu Patore very beautifully merges memories with food. I was very touched by this, but I was also interested in why other cookbooks on different Dalit communities don't exist. But then when I started reading more and more Dalit autobiographies, I realized that they were just filled with memories of food. And so I began to convert each autobiography I read into a little cookbook. So this was called Is Hunger Gnawing at Your Belly, based on Lakshman Gaikwad's autobiography called Branded. And then I also read the Manusmriti, which Dr. Ambedkar publicly burnt in 1927 because of the way Manu writes about and speaks about lower caste people, about women, and Dr. Ambedkar really felt that even though the Manusmriti had been written so long ago, its values were still steeped in Hindu culture, and how untouchability was still functioning then and now. And that's why Dr. Ambedkar burnt it in protest. I read the Manusmriti and then I tore it up, and I began making plain sheets of paper from it. As new paper, perhaps, with the Manusmriti still in it, but maybe you can do something with the paper afterwards, or just leave it blank. I also made this installation called Chavdar, based on the Mahat Satyagraha in 1927. This is a popular image I found online of the Mahat Satyagraha. Dr. Ambedkar and Dalit activists went to Chavdar water tank and drank water from it. Dalit communities weren't allowed to access that water tank. So this was really an act, not to quench one's thirst, but an act of liberty, equality, and fraternity, as Dr. Ambedkar put it. When they did drink the water, the Brahmin community of that area decided to purify the water from the untouchable's touch by pouring 108 pots of panchagavya into it. Now, panchagavya is this mix of cow dung, cow urine, ghee, milk, and curd. And so they poured it all into the water tank, and then it was okay for them to use. So I decided to make my own panchagavya, which is left over in these glasses here. It was very difficult in Amsterdam to access dairy and also convince people to let me take some cow dung and cow urine from there. It's just some images of a farm I was able to access in the north of Amsterdam. Yeah, and then these are ceramic bhakris that I also began making during my 3 months at the Rijksakademie. Dalit literature, especially Dalit literature from Maharashtra, speaks a lot about the bhakri, which is a millet roti that's cheaper than wheat, much more filling and a bit like hardier. So it is considered a staple food for people here, especially in rural Maharashtra. And Dalit writers, especially Sharan Kumar Limbai, he speaks so beautifully about the bhakri, almost in a devotional manner. And I was very moved by that, and I wanted to make or like see or do something with the bhakri then. But I was in Amsterdam, and so I decided to try and make it from ceramics. We did have access to a range of workshops at the Rijksakademie, including a beautiful ceramic one. So I was able to go there and start making these bhakris. These were just all tests that I kept trying out. And this was what some of them ended up looking like. And then I carried this forward into my practice now. Actually, all three or four works that I did at the Rijksakademie are still things I'm working through right now. I'd like to just mention ISCP in New York. I did a few other residencies and fellowships as well, but ISCP brought things together in a way for my photo archive practice. This was my studio at ISCP. I was just there for a month, and I think by this time, this was 2018, the monsoon of 2018. Yeah, I had my focus, but ISCP allowed me to just go through and organize my family photographs, and while doing that, I began noticing, images of us eating and enjoying food, and then I began marking these out. And cropping them, putting them together. And this ended up being a body of work called Eat with Great Delight. This was shown at Ishara in September 2019. ISCP, I think owing to the small size as well, and the fact that I wasn't really interested in making work that I had to like bring back all the way to India. It just allowed me that focus. And then, so today I work at a Deepa studio. It's a ceramic studio about 20 minutes away from my house. And it was set up by Ruby Chunjunwala, who's the artist in the center over here. This is in the backyard of her house, and she had set it up, I think, for her personal practice many years ago. And now it's at Deepa, and it hosts a lot of workshops. A lot of her commercial work also happens there, and art commissions, etc. This is a group of us local artists when we were attending a workshop by Irish artist Jane Jerman. She was teaching us Ugvara techniques. That's me on the right. On the top left is Adhav Sir. He's the manager of Adipa. And on the bottom left is Shiv Shankar. He's the main assistant of Ruby and has been working at Adipa for a very long time. Just images of the space. This was my work going in the kiln, I think. Yeah. Some more people who work at Adipa. Subhash, Mangal, Jassi, and Manisha. They are employed by Ruby, and Adipa also, as I mentioned, does some commercial work and also works with large commissions and artworks that Ruby makes. So they all assist her with that. And this is a work that I was doing at Adipa last year. I was just trying to arrange it. This is the sort of finished work, still in the studio. It was called Ukadla, and it was based on a recipe, a Dalit food item called Ukadla, that basically means taking leftovers and putting them all together in a pan, heating them up, and then eating them. Yeah, it was very nice building this and making this at Adipa, not only because I had company of other artists and artisans who would, come and help me out, look at it, give me feedback, laugh at it. Shiv Shankar found it really funny that I was making bhakris, which seemed like such simple food, but then, I think he started enjoying watching me make it, and sometimes in his free time he would make like small ceramic seeds or something that could go in my installation. And then we have the Handmade Paper Institute, 20 minutes the other way from my house. It was set up in 1940 by scientist K.B. Joshi. These are three little busts I found in the institute. K.B. Joshi on the right, Mahatma Gandhi in the middle, and Nehru on the left. Gandhi helped K.B. Joshi set it up, mainly to aid the Swadeshi movement at that time. The Handmade Paper Institute also provided the paper on which the first true copy of the Constitution was written. And yeah, it's been a very active part of Pune since then. This is a little note, Nai Saal ki Shubhkamnaएं from Gandhi. So that's best wishes from the new year for the new year. Paper drawing at the Handmade Paper Institute. This is how they first sort out color rags, so into white and different colors, to then pulp it. This is where they make the pulp into paper sheets. Yeah, this is where they put the pulp in, and these big drums keep revolving the pulp to keep it fresh. And then when the paper is dry, it's flattened with these big rulers at the back. So quite a few parts to the process. And then they also bind books here made from this paper. This was paper that I was making in February with my Manusmriti pulp as well. I would carry the pulp from home because I think I didn't want to shock anybody by tearing the Manusmriti in front of them. So I would do it at home, and then I would carry the pulp to the paper institute, mix it with their pulp, and then we'd make sheets. This is my sheets drying. And it was an incredibly fast process and also so efficient. Some of the employees have been there for 25, 30 years and have so much experience. They really understand the material much more than I would ever. And it was also fast. Like for me to make this paper, 100 sheets would take, I think a month or two. And at the institute, we were able to make it in 2 days. So it was really worth it working with them. And then we come back to TIFA working studios. So I have been occasionally working here and also organizing another residency. So last year, Trishla and I decided to bring local artists together and ask them to shift their studios into TIFA for a few months. This was our group. It was called Shifting Studios, just so that, we'd have some company, we'd be able to have critique sessions, and just use what TIFA had to offer. This was my studio, and I was experimenting with my paper pulp a lot, trying to figure out ways to install it or not install it. This was me making the paper on the roof of TIFA. More paper. And these nets at the back actually were made by my friends Rupali and Prabhakar for me. I got the materials, and Rupali and Prabhakar live, their studio is about 10 minutes away from my house. And it's incredible having them there. Not only do I have my peers living so close to me, but I can learn from them, and we can spend more time together. And they also have tools that I don't have here, and they can really advise me and help me out with things like this as well. This is Prabhakar helping me make the net. And then these are just images on my roof. So this is here at home. I have a rooftop which I use to make paper work. These are laddus that I made from the Manusmriti. And this is here at home, inside in this room. I have a little desk and a garden area, and this is the other part. So this is actually, it's a double bed, but I use one to sleep on, and the other one I've converted into a desk. I'm mainly spending time here reading. I mean, now because the lockdown, I can't get out anyway, but I don't really make that much work here. It's just really for reading and research. But I do use this desk a lot, so I bind books here. The recipe booklets just they kept developing, and I kept making more. And while I get them printed at the paper gully, I usually bring them back and hand bind them. Now I have about 15 booklets, and each of them are based on different autobiographies, Dalit autobiographies or books. So The Outcast by Sharan Kumar Limbali, Jutan, Opara, and I'm rereading The Weave of My Life by Urmila Pawar and Karuku by Bama right now, for some research specifically with gender and caste. Stop sharing now. Well, that's the end of the slideshow and end of the presentation. Thank you for listening. Yeah, I just wanted to end by saying that all these spaces, so you know, making spaces for artists, for other artists, and then attending these residencies, which each had their unique studio setup, all of that did play quite a significant role in not only my practice, but also how I respond to my city and my home as a studio space. Yeah, thanks.
Well, thank you so much, Rajyashri. This was really amazing. Great insight into how you're kind of thinking and working and have evolved through these different spaces. One of the things that really struck me is that your practice almost always invokes spaces of gathering, whether they're public spaces or libraries, meals, feasts, homes, get-togethers. So I wanted to know, how much does gathering play a part in the making of your artworks? And can one say that your studio is where gatherings take place?
Yeah, I think you could definitely say that. In terms of my artworks, say particularly the recipe booklets, I've been interested in just finding more and more Dalit voices through Dalit literature, and bringing them together, not necessarily to make them one voice, but bring that diversity out of Dalit communities, of these many different experiences of these communities, say through food, which is what I've been doing mainly. But I think also in terms of actually working in my studio and working in different studio spaces, I do think it's inherent in my practice to have people around, whether I'm dependent on them to actually produce the work, but also to have groups of artists coming together just to critique and hang around one another. Yeah, I would say both are quite right. Yeah.
Mm-hmm. And this brings me to actually a related question, which is with regard to the number of people that sometimes are involved in the making of your works. And I'm pretty sure this is a question that you've been asked before, which is that knowing how you critically examine the idea of work, occupation, and labor in your practice, can you share how your idea of the studio works with the embodiment of those concepts of work, occupation, labor?
Yeah, it is a tough question, and I've been struggling with it since I began my practice. I think thinking about, as an artist, do you only create your own work, and if you do get assistance, how do you acknowledge that assistance? That's always been on my mind, especially the larger installations I used to make. They did require help, and I would hire daily wage labor for them. Yeah, and I think a few years later, I felt like, no, I should be just producing my own work on my own and justify myself as an artist almost. But now I think I'm trying to reach a balance where one can hire people, work with other people respectfully, pay them properly, and not really be bogged down by the guilt that this question often comes with, especially for younger artists. I think if we get too wrapped up in this question, you're not really going anywhere.
Right. And then I want to come to another question, which is picking up on the reference to food and water and recipes and the kitchen that keeps appearing again and again in your practice, yeah? But somehow you turn them around. They become unconsumable, undigestible, unusable. So could one say that the studio, in your case, is an inverse of the kitchen being a place where, you know, things get prepared to get consumed, but also to bring people together? So is the studio an inverse of the kitchen, or the opposite, that the studio is a kitchen to produce the uneatable and instead to produce a gathering or something? So
I think the latter. I think the studio and the kitchen for me are quite fluid spaces. So at home, if I'm making work, I will often just use my tools will be utensils from the kitchen, whether it's the balan to make ceramics, or it's mixer, the blender in the kitchen to make paper pulp. And I found these not only accessible because they have been, right there to use, but there's also a certain familiarity with them. Not that I even spend that much time in the kitchen often, but there is just this understanding of the kitchen as the space that I can navigate in easily. And so once that's transferred to the studio, I feel more comfortable, I'm more confident, and I'm speaking about food, or rather like the unedibleness of it. So it all ties together in a way. Yeah.
Even with the ceramic studio, I suppose, because you're using the kiln and you're baking.
Yeah.
So it goes all the way in all sorts of formations, yeah?
Yeah.
Got it. I think Laura had a question also.
Yeah, so then one of the other elements that I thought was interesting was the presence of of the neighborhood, and thinking of that as a unit within your studio. Can you share more on the importance of the neighborhood to you and in your kind of conception of the studio? And especially knowing that you have worked in different places, like how would then the concept of the neighborhood play out in different cities and countries as well?
Yeah. Does your studio, or does the moving studio almost produce a kind of sense of neighborhood wherever you go?
I think that's actually been one of the most exciting parts of being able to attend these different residencies, is to explore and understand different neighborhoods that come with these studio spaces. And they've always led me to new ideas, new ways of thinking, new friendships. And in fact, earlier the neighborhoods were a site for research. They were actively part of how I made my artworks. Nowadays, the neighborhood is really where I grew up, a space that I've always known. And in a way, I think my works have also become more sort of family oriented, more looking at this actual neighborhood that I'm in. My extended family also lives in this neighborhood, so it's all connected. But yeah, having people around, even artists like Prabhakar and Rupali nearby, in the sort of larger neighborhood, all of these have become an important part of what my studio really means to me.
Yeah. And it's also not like just a domestication of the idea of neighborhood, no? It's about also friendships and neighboring practices and neighboring kind of voices, as you are often interested in.
Yeah.
Then we have a set question that we end with every time. Laura, do you want to do the honors?
Yeah, which is, what are the spaces that are intersecting at this very moment to create your studio? And I also like kind of extending it to where you see it in the near future as well, like kind of where it's going.
Right now, definitely my bedroom here is my studio. I'm reading a lot. Reading is, I guess I didn't speak about it during the presentation, but whether it's academic texts or just Dalit literature, reading is a very important part of my practice, sort of how I begin to make ideas. So that's really what I'm doing right now, just trying to write a lot, read a lot, rewrite things. And I am like, how much ever one can, I am really appreciating it and enjoying it. Once, I guess, this phase is over, which I'm not sure when it will be, I think I would get back to the spaces that I spoke about, which are the Ceramic Studio and the Handmade Paper Institute. I really want to continue my relationship with them. They're still sort of, I feel like my relationship with them has just begun. And even my mediums of paper, pulp, and ceramics, there's a lot that I still have to explore in them. So I hope to just build on that and make them more active for myself. Yeah.
Excellent.
I mean, I guess.
Thank you so much. Yeah. Oh, sorry. Yes. No, please. Yes.
I mean, I just also wanted, because you've been really active digitally, so I wanted to kind of see if there was a digital extension, if like you saw a digital extension of the studio, like at the moment as well. You've been doing a lot of talks, and I mean, I don't know, there seems to be like a lot of variation between like how much people are and aren't using the digital too, and like whether, and there's new kind of avenues opening up with that.
Yeah, I mean, I guess I didn't think about it as part of my studio practice, but I think in these times maybe it should be thought of like that. It's been really interesting to have conversations with people online, whether it's through these Zoom calls or Facebook Lives and things, which I think a lot of people didn't consider at all before this. You have to be physically present. So it has opened up a new way of sharing knowledge and sharing ideas. And maybe not right now, but I think once it's sort of not treated like an online portfolio, which maybe this could be, I'm hoping it won't be. I think we can see what more can come out of this and how we can really interact better in some ways through these online spaces.
I mean, yeah, it's almost unavoidable to think of the digital and how it sort of pervades into so many realms of our experiences right now. But anything else, Laura, Rajyashri? Otherwise, shall we call it an end? Yes. Well,
sure.
No, thank you very much. This was excellent, very insightful, and I think for us, I would take away quite a few things from the presentation and the Q&A of the studio as a space for gathering, and gathering being an important sort of dimension of your practice, of a gathering of voices, of histories. Also, how you marked the fluid nature between the studio and the kitchen for you, from the utensils to the kinds of processes which go into making the works and crafting the works that you produce. And finally, an important spatial dimension of the neighborhood, which seems to sort of keep you try to form around your practice and around your studio. So I think these are quite valuable points that will leave a lot for us to think about. Thank you again, and all the very best.